All right, the Hearse Chaser is on the move today. We are talking about moving state lines. In fact, this podcast is entitled When State Lines Rewrite Your Legacy. And a lot of people, I know, when they move, the estate planning elder law attorney is not on their mind. I totally understand that. I take no offense to that. But the people who are watching this episode are either the children of someone who moved to a new state, or you're thinking about it, or you have moved to a new state and you're wondering, do I need to update my estate plan? Do I need to talk to a local attorney? We're going to talk about all those and more on this episode of the Hearse Chaser.
You're listening to the Hearse Chaser podcast show. Here's your host, Stephen McClellan.
All right, so the bags are packed, you're in the car, you're changing addresses, and you got a million things to do to move into a new home. I don't know what the statistics are as far as when someone feels settled, but I've got to think that in most cases, if you move to a new state, a new home, it's going to take over a year or so to get settled. And I know estate planning attorneys and elder law attorneys are the least on the minds of most folks. So it's I would say, in my experience, the average person who moved to a new house probably contacts my office like 3 or 4 years later. That's the average. So don't feel bad if you're watching this episode and you moved 3 or 4 years ago. I never want people to feel bad. As long as you're alive, there's still time to make some changes to your estate plan. So I just want to show some statistics and show you're not alone. Interestingly, around 19%, almost 20, that's 1 in 5 older adults, that's 65 and older, moved in the given year, made the move to a different state. So 1 in 5 are moving to a different state. And that's pretty interesting. You know, that generally means it's a further move. There's so many reasons people move. A lot of times it is to be a grandparent to kids who have moved away, wanting to be involved in their life. The top states, if you're watching this, probably good chance, Florida, Arizona, South Carolina. All of those had net migrations that were positive. Those losing, and those are the ones I've seen in my office, are California, New York, and Illinois. They are the ones that have a net negative migration, people leaving. And I've seen it. And it is a lot of people, especially from California, the cost of living is a huge thing. If you're watching this, maybe I shouldn't spill the secret, but in my state, anyway, Arkansas, cost of living is very, very low. And 60% of the retirees who move, they have been selling a home in a higher price market and buying in a cheaper local market, and often pocketing over $100,000 in home equity. And that is from the AARP. 100% agree that is true. I see it all the time. What they are selling their homes. I don't know who's buying the homes in those other places, but they are selling them and they're moving. So when you move states, I think it's so important to understand that so many things change. Laws change. It's not like estate planning is one size fits all. Believe it or not, my state is very different than other states. Louisiana down south, very different, right? We're all a little bit different. And so the rules of the state are what govern, okay? And what you don't want is, well, let's say somebody does a trust in Massachusetts, and the trust says this will be governed by the law of Massachusetts, and you move to another state, and you die, and the family's like, how do we administer this? We can't find a local attorney in Arizona that knows Massachusetts law, so you end up possibly having to have two different attorneys interpret a trust. So you want to be careful what the site is, the location of the trust is that's governing that document. And that alone might be a reason to update your estate plan. So what happens? Well, if you move to a different states, that's going to have a big impact on taxes. For example, Arkansas has a state income tax. Florida doesn't, Tennessee doesn't, Texas doesn't, which I can see why people want to move to those states where they don't have an income tax. Probate is going to be very different from state to state. What I mean by that is Texas, from what I've heard, not so hard as Arkansas probate code. That is much harder, longer. Other states may say, oh, it was only 2-3 months. Arkansas, I have a 6-month creditor period in probate. It takes a lot longer. And I got property rights. And typically, I would say if you have land in Arkansas, it's going to be governed by, Arkansas law. So some key things you have to do right away, I think, is make sure you got an updated driver's license, voter registration, you update your address for IRS purposes, make sure that you cancel any homestead exemptions, claim new ones. So if you buy a new home, make sure they know that the new home is your homestead. And if you happen to live in different states, I have some clients that are snowbirds. I didn't even know snowbirds were a thing until I was young. I was younger, and we had my aunt, my great aunt. She would go down to Texas. And so if you move, you got to track your time. Sometimes that can affect your taxes. But how does it affect the estate plan? That's the key reason you're here. Should you even worry about it? Well, let me tell you a few reasons. First, if you're moving to a new state, there's a high probability that you're buying a new home and you're opening new accounts in the new state. So, for example, a lot of people, they buy a new home and they have a trust. And this happens when people move, even within in their same county or city. Whenever they move to a new home, they forget to put the new home in the trust. I can't tell you how many people make that mistake. If that's the case, you want to make sure that your new home is in the trust. And sometimes you have to go to a local attorney to put that into the trust. You could probably buy it in the name of the trust, but that depends whether or not you financed it. Those various things. Oftentimes, your distribution will change if you're moving to another place. A lot of you might end up moving in with a child, and that would change your distribution. You might also be moving away from somebody and want to change your distribution. A lot of times, if I get this trust from another state and I'm looking at it, I'm like, this trust is such mumbo jumbo. I don't even know what they're saying. And most of my clients say, I don't know what it says. So instead of tweaking it, saying, I'm just going to change a little bit here, change a little bit here, I'm going to restate the thing into Arkansas law. Okay? So it's an Arkansas trust. The name and the date stays the same, but it's language I know that works in my state. And clients say, yeah, I think updating it would be great because a lot of times you haven't looked at your estate plan for over 10 years, so I guarantee there is something that needs to be updated. And a lot of times, I think, most of the clients who are moving at this age are 65. I'm not seeing my mid-70-year-olds move. 70-year-olds don't like to move. It's harder on them, so it's really that 65, maybe 62 to 70-year-old range. And a lot of those folks who did an estate plan, maybe did an estate plan once 20 years ago when they had minor kids, they wanted guardianship language. So they moved to my state, and I'm like, this will doesn't really avoid probate in Arkansas. Okay, I don't know about other states, but this will is just, it's basically instructions for a probate judge. And I kind of explain that, and I say, I think maybe this will was fine when you were in your 40s, 30s, right? But you're like 60, 70. And if you say to me, my goal is I want this to be as smooth as possible, I want to avoid a mess, then that's not a will, right? Let's talk about trust. And I often see if it's been more than 10 years, a lot has changed in the family. And if you had an estate plan a long time ago, a lot of times I'll see where it just has husband and wife's name on it. Frustrates me to no end. Why attorneys happened last week? Some attorney put husband and wife as the agent. That's fantastic, but one's going to die before the other. And in that case, the survivor has no power of attorney. So having backups, if you got to have backups, you got to have contingencies. And even when you say, oh, no, there's nothing happened, they're younger than me, always have backups. So that kind of frustrates me when they haven't planned for that. Now, let me also say a caveat here, thinking that if you did move, there's a high probability that you are coming up to 70 or are 70. And if that's the case, let me tell you kind of a mindset, wisdom I would share. When you're 60, I think most people say, well, I want spouse first, and then I want my kids as contingent. 1, 2, 3. Okay? Well, when you get 70, here's the concern. What if you both get sick at the same time? You really can't take care of each other. So oftentimes I'll move that child up from a backup agent to an initial agent, so it will say spouse or that child. And clients, when they think about that, they say, that makes good sense. I never really thought of it that way. And yeah, I think I need to make that change. I'll tell you, probably the best reason to have a local attorney is having somebody that you can go and see. And I have found that the older clients get, the more they want to see face to face.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hearse Chaser podcast show. Our mission is to be your first choice for last wishes. Want to dive deeper? Join us over at the Hearse Chaser Academy, where we've created 8 on-demand courses for each stage of life. From young adulthood to retirement, navigating separation or blended families, and everything in between, we help you plan for the future, no matter where you're at. Now stay with us as the ride continues on the Hearse Chaser podcast show.
They want to talk to you in person. They want to shake your hand. A lot is lost if it's just on the phone. They take a lot of clues from reading your lips, from, if I know a client is not good hearing in the left ear, well, I'm going to be speaking to the right ear the whole time. Little things like that can help make them feel comfortable about the changes they're making. And when those documents have a local attorney on them, it's going to lead to a smoother outcome. Because a lot of times what happens is, so there's a power of attorney, and the family gives it to the bank, and the bank says, thanks for this, we're going to get back to you. They're going to send it to the legal team. Well, if it's a local attorney, well, they've seen my power of attorney a million times, and they'll say, hey, that looks great. Now, if it's not, well, then that attorney that's looking over those documents at the bank might take them a few days to get back to you, and they may see something they don't like. And as I've talked to colleagues, I've been to conferences around the U.S., I can tell you that one of the concerns that my colleagues have had is facilities not recognizing out-of-state powers of attorney for any number of reasons. And when it comes to the gold meaning the money, he who holds the gold makes the rules. And, they don't have to honor it. And if that's the case, well, that's a lot of trouble. Now, it's a very different thing if a local bank had a problem with one of our documents. Well, that's not good for business, right? That's not going to help them. They're not going to have. I haven't had that problem, but if it's an out-of-state attorney, and they're going to be probably scrutinized a little bit more, and they're probably not going to worry about upsetting a local attorney, right? So I do think that matters, and I've heard of families having to redo their documents in another state because they were told they had to. The out-of-state document just wasn't good enough, and I do want you to know a couple things. One, if that old document doesn't have your correct address on it, ooh, that's tough, right? Sometimes that can cause a wrench in things. A lot of times there can be typos on old documents. here's a little tip. You should read your documents, make sure names are spelled right. Now, the concern on healthcare documents is mostly for daughters, because daughters are the ones who often get married, often change their last name. So can you run into those problems? You can if the documents have a daughter's name on it, and that can just slow things down when you don't need to slow things down in the context of needing healthcare. So I kind of encourage all women, before you give up that driver's license, just make a copy of them, all those old copies, so you can kind of timestamp that was your name on a certain date. I think that's pretty helpful. I do often think that what I said is true also about financial advisors. You know, you a lot of times people want to maintain that relationship with that financial advisor that they've known for 10, 15 years. It gets harder, right, if they live out of state and you don't get to see them face to face. I found people want that connection face to face, especially, you know, the older you get, you trust yourself less, and you really want to make sure that you're in good hands. And so you might update banks. That's a very common thing. Many banks are regional. And if that's the case, you got to make sure that new bank account is set up to go to the trust. I see that as a common fault. People open up new bank accounts and they forget to name that in the trust. I can't tell you the importance of having a good team. Even if you keep the financial advisor, you probably want a local CPA that you can talk to that can kind of walk you through the state-specific things, if there are any. But I often want to say that if you move and the previous attorney that you worked with did a little bit of estate planning, a little bit of family law, a little bit of criminal, or in many cases, well, that was the guy I knew, that was my best friend, you know, always good to get a second opinion from the guy who just does estate planning and elder law. And, you know, a lot of times because my firm just does a few things, there are so many benefits that we add, that we do, and our processes are just faster and quicker that ultimately helps folks and get things set up right. And just having a second pair of eyes, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I just want you to look over my documents, give me some pointers, see if there's anything that jumps out at you. And it's surprising, the things that I have seen in some of those out-of-state documents. And some folks, when we've told them, hey, bring them in ahead of time and we'll scan them in so I can read them, they find out they don't even have them. So here they thought they had them, but they didn't survive the move. Or perhaps older attorneys, I don't think, scan documents in the way we do. We scan everything in, so we have a copy of everything. And that's good to do too, so that local attorney has it, especially if you travel, right? If you go between different states to see kids, it's nice to know you have an attorney that has those healthcare documents that can send it to a hospital if something happens along the way. Just kind of very important to have someone local, especially because at your passing, the kids are probably going to want to go to someone local who is there that they can all meet and have that discussion about what happens now. And so there's a high probability that the attorney that did the work 20 or 30 years ago is probably in their 60s, maybe 70s, and there's a high probability they won't be around for another 10, 15 years. And that's true about all of us. At some point, your doctors and lawyers need to be younger than you, and moving often kind of gives you an opportunity to find new doctors, kind of shooting for younger ones that you, quote unquote, won't have to change, and have an estate planning attorney that will be there. And the whole idea is, you may not be rewriting your legacy, as I mentioned in the title, but you ought to at least get it looked at by an attorney that goes through this on a daily basis. Maybe there's language in that old document that just simply doesn't apply to the current state that you're at. Or Perhaps your state's gotten a little bit larger over the last few years, and you need to write some tax provisions in there on protecting the assets. So I certainly want to say that if you've moved, welcome to my state or welcome to your new state. If you're looking for that attorney, especially in another state, I really like the Hearse Chaser podcast academy that we have, because it kind of gives you some clues on what kind of attorney to look for. But in short, you want to find someone who really says, this is all I want to do. They've been doing it for at least 5 years or so, focused on that. And you want to be very mindful of the best versus those who have designations that take certain tests and those kind of things. So talk to folks, get an idea of how you feel talking to them. It's good. A lot of times, the last thing I'll say, and I think this is probably the best thing I can say, is as you move to a new location, and I this is probably the biggest value I provide to clients who move to different states, is they start asking me questions about the hospitals, about the medical providers, about local home health agencies. They have questions about all these nursing homes and facilities, and that can be so helpful by having someone local who knows the sort of the environment, the people that come along with the challenges with growing older. So moving state lines is about having that connection to someone who, I go through this every single day in my office when people have questions about aging in place, the best agencies. And I'm just here to say, well, here's what other people have used, and here's some recommendations. Maybe here's a better facility based on kind of the challenges that you're mentioning. And so moving state lines, yes, it's a little bit about documents, but it's also about who you know and who they know to kind of help in many different ways. I hope this helped, and I hope that if you have moved, it has been a smooth transition. No doubt there's always bumps in the road, but hopefully with the Hearse Chaser, we can help smooth those out, not only for you, but for your family. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Hearse Chaser podcast show. Please remember, you can't outrun a hearse, but you can leave your family with a smooth ride.